I wonder what time it is. Oh, it must be time for homework advice. Let's do it. Okay, once again, let's start with the end result, what we want you to do with this program. So you're going to read in that list of files, or you're going to read in those FudgeMart products, and then your program is going to build unique categories from that list. And if you select any category, you will see the products in that category. Cool. Basically, that's it. So my solution to this program is about 30 lines of code here, give or take a few. And what's most important is going to be the approach. And I really encourage you to sort of follow my approach. If you want to try it on your own and you think you could figure it out, fantastic. If you think you're having trouble, I really highly suggest using my approach. I am once again going to use problem simplification to solve this problem, to conquer this particular program and solve this problem. I assume you've read through, the homework assignment here. I don't need to read through this for you. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Assume you've looked at the file, right? You see there's different categories in here, right? So what we really need to do before we start coding is really think through the bits of the problem and how we're going to accomplish them. Like, let's take this complicated problem that you've seen work and now break it up into little itty bitty problems. And I'm just going to throw my code right here. I'm going to make a couple cells right here. So let's do some simple high-level algorithm thinking about how the program is going to work, right? Let's do that first. So first and foremost, let's think about inputs and outputs, right? I mean, this is where you start. You start here because you don't start with code because you've seen what happens when I start with code. I get lost. So I would encourage you to not do that. So as input, you are going to, as you saw from the video of me using the program, you're going to pick a category, right? So input is going to be a category. For example, one of the categories might be clothing, right here, clothing. So, for example, clothing. Now, what we want to do is we want it to be a drop-down. Ultimately, it is a drop-down widget, right? Which we now know that needs to be a list. So we're going to have to build a list of, clothing, hardware, etc. The meat of this problem is figuring out how to build this list from this data here. Right, from this data here. So you can see there's hardware, and then clothing. So how do I build just that unique, but then hardware repeats, right? So how do I build that unique list from this larger set of data? That's one of the challenges. If you cannot figure that challenge out, hard code your list, okay? Because I want you to get something done. All right, what are we going to output? We're going to output all products in that category. And that includes the category itself and the name and the price. Right? Those are the things that we're going to output. So if I select clothing, I'm going to output these guys here. And then, I don't know, are there more clothing? There aren't, right? But if there were, I would. Hardware is a great example because there's some hardware here, and then there's some hardware down here, right? So I gotta find all of them in the file. So we got a couple things that we now need to figure out, and I think we have a pretty good idea of maybe an algorithm to do that, or at least the beginnings of an algorithm. So let's think through the steps here. So the first thing I know I got to do is I got to read the file into a list. I know that a couple of reasons, because one of the things that it says is a requirement. It says do it any way you want, but you must load each product from the file into a list. So it says I got to do that. So that's the first thing I need to figure out. How can I do that? Okay. Once I have the file into a Python list, I can use the Python list. So I can use the list to create another list of unique categories. So then at that point, I'll have one list of all of my products and then another list of just categories. Okay, so now I can sort of think about the main interaction, right? You know, you pick an item from category list, and this is what I do. For each item in the list, well, that should be 4, right? I don't know why I'm numbering these. I hate numbering things because you're gonna, I don't know. It makes it confusing. I'm gonna take the numbering out. I did it so I can refer to it, but whatever. So for each of these items in the list, I'm gonna check to see if the item category matches the selected category. If that happens, I'm going to print the item. Category, name, and price. If it doesn't match, I'm not going to print it, right? So let's go back. You know, let's suppose I pick clothing. Is this clothing? No, I don't print it. Is this clothing? No, I don't print it. Is this clothing? No, I don't print it. Is this clothing? Yes, I print it. So clothing, yes, yes, yes. Clothing, no, I don't print it. So again, you're just going through these line at a time, and so you know you're going to print out all of these because these are all the clothing. Now there's some little details in here, like, you know, how do I parse this, right? This is delimited by this symbol here, this pipe. So how do I deal with that? Again, deal with that later. Just get it to print, then figure it out. Okay? So if I can read this and get these things to print, I'm in good shape, right? So let's go think this through some more now. Okay, so we've got this sort of thing, right? Do I need to create a list of categories? Some of you might be saying, no, I don't, because can't I just, well, I do need to make a list of unique categories, but how I find the item in the list is going to vary very greatly. All right. So now that I've got this algorithm, we need to think through in details. Can I write this trivially? Can I write this like in my head? Do I know how to write this in Python? If not, maybe I need to break it up into a function, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a function called load products. And I'm going to pass into it the name of the file. I'm actually going to do it down here. So I'm going to call this number 1 now. And number 1, again, I'm taking a problem simplification approach where, you know, I'm going to refine this again and just write this program. So this one here, number 1, I need to input a file name, and then I'm going to output list of products. Yeah, I might be able to write that. I might be able to write this without any additional, you know, thinking at this point. But let's just go for it, right? So I'm going to open the file. So here's my process, my steps. I'm going to open my file up. Open file. name for reading. Read. There's two ways you read from a file, line at a time or all at once, right? I'm going to read lines from file. And I want to somehow get those into a list. Get those into a list. I'm not sure about that. How do I do that, right? Okay, now I could go on and start thinking about step 2, but I shouldn't, right? In the problem simplification approach, what you do is you enjoy your little wins. And my first little win is getting 1 to work. Okay? So let's do that together. So I'm going to call this load products. Def load products. And I'm going to pass in a file name as input. And for now, I'm just going to pass. I'm not going to do anything. And then down here, I'm going to say, let's call this products. How about product list? That's the output. Load products. And then let's pick a file name. And for now, I'm going to pick the test file name, right? There's like there's like a FudgeMart products and a FudgeMart products test, which is a smaller file. So the smaller file is a little easier for them to manage. And if I can get that working, then I'll worry about getting it working with the big file. All right, so let's put that right here. So this is me defining the function. This is me calling the function. Okay, I'm just going to run this. Nothing really happens because, I guess I could print out the product list. But there's nothing in there. Okay, so now I got to write the guts of my function, right? So open the file name for reading. Okay, with open file name for reading as I'll just call it R. And then you're either going to read it all at once into one big string or read it with read lines into a list, right? Those are the two ways you read from a file. You either say rread, and what rread returns back is a string. Or as we saw in the lab, you can do rread lines. And what that returns back is a list. And what we need is a list. And it just so happens that each product is on a line. All right. So let's say return rread lines. I don't know if this is going to work. If you don't like that, you can say lines and then return lines. Ah, there we go. So there's item number 1, item number 2, item number 3. Remember, I'm using the test one, so maybe I should open the test one up. Item 1, item 2, item 3. Now, it just so happens that each of these products has a new line at the end. I'm not sure if that's going to cause a problem. I'm not going to worry about it right now. I have my lines. If I need to worry about it, I will. But as of right now, I'm going to assume that I don't need to worry about this. So in essence, I've completed step 1. Okay, now I need to use this list to create another list. All right? So I need to create, for example, from this data, how many categories are there? Well, there's hardware again, so I'm not going to include that twice, and then clothing. So there's 2 categories in this little small sample set of data. So how can I automatically build those categories from this list? I don't know, so I should probably come up with an approach. Okay, so let's do that. Use the list to create another list of unique categories. Okay. So this is 2. I'm going to input, this is 2 problem. And I'm going to input a list of products. And we're going to output list of category names. And I'm going to say it's a unique list. We don't want any repeats in there. And then let's think through the steps. All right. So, at times, you know you're going to have to loop over this, right? But let's think about what kind of action we want to take as we loop over it. All right. So, at times it makes sense to do this and play computer. So I'm going to say like for item in list of products. Okay. Now, do we have hardware? I'm going to ask, do we have hardware in that unique list of category names? Well, we start out, there's no categories in there, right? There's none. And I guess we should say that categories is an empty list. So if the item category is in the categories list, don't add it again. Else, add it, because it's not in the list. Right? So I don't like the way this sort of looks, but again, I gotta do something and figure it out, right? So I don't want to write this as a function yet because I'm not 100% sure that it's going to be right. So I'm going to just sort of play with this. I'm going to say for product in product list. And let's come up with categories. And let's make that an empty list. Okay, and then for now I'm just going to print product. So when you see me print, let me take this one out here. I print the product, and it has it's delimited by this thing. And this is the one I want. So I need to split this, or I need to find this, right, and get everything to the left of this so that I can figure out if it's hardware or whatever, right? So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say category is product split on a whatever the heck that is. This is a pipe. I'm going to copy that. And I only want the very first thing. When I split them, I'll just show you all product. We're just going to say item. I don't know what I want to call this. Prod items. When you split it, prod items is a list of the individual things in the item. See that? All right. So I only want the first one, which is 0, which I want hardware, clothing. I only want the first one of those, right, in that list. So hardware, clothing. So now I kind of have what I need, right? So I'm just going to call this is going to be called category. I'll call it product category. So I'm going to print product category. There you go. Now, let's think through this. In this list, do I add hardware? Yes. Do I add hardware again? No. Do I add clothing? Yes. So what determines whether or not I add something? If product category not in the cat's, I'm going to call cat. I'm going to change this to cat list. Cat list. I don't want to type in category because it's just a tragedy watching me type anything. So if the product category is not in the category list, then I want to take that category list and I want to append to it, add to the end, the product category. Then when I'm all done, that cat list, print cat list. Okay, so first time through, hardware. Second time through, hardware. Third time through, clothing. But I only add to the list when it's not there. So the first time through, it adds hardware. The second time through, it does not add hardware again. And then the third time through, it adds clothing. So it looks like that works. So to show you that that works, let me change this test FudgeMart products to just FudgeMart products. And then watch, we should get all the categories now. See, this is each category line by line, but then when we're done, we have a list and it just has the unique categories. Because the first time sporting goods gets added, the other 9 times it doesn't get added. Let me turn this print off. We don't need it anymore. Okay. And then that does it. This builds the product list. So your job here is to refactor this into a function. Right? So what you want to input is the product list, and what you want to output is the cat list. You should be able to do that. I gave you the guts of the function. You just got to figure out how to input that prod list and then output that cat list. All right, and then that handles these 2 steps here, 1 and 2, which are probably the trickiest part of this program. Okay, now let's think through the main interaction a bit. Let's think through that. So, you know, you're going to have from IPython widgets import interact manual. And then you're going to have your decorator function, which is interact manual, and then we're going to say category equals, and then we're going to give it that cat list, and then that's going to decorate a function called, I don't know, find products based on that category. Okay, and then we're just going to pass here. So that's going to get us to this point. See that? Woo! Now you might say, where the hell did these come from, Mike? Well, cat list, what we made up here. So at some point I have to get this all into one cell, right? But when you bring it over into one cell, you want to have your imports at the top. I'm still seeing this mistake made. Imports at the top. Then your user-defined functions. Okay. Then in this case, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to load the products. Before we run the interaction, we have to load the products. And we have to create the categories. I don't know, however you're going to do that. Product, you have to write this function, right? Cat, or cat list equals create categories from product list. You're going to have to write that. Okay, you're going to have to write this from this code up here. You're going to write that function. Okay, then what do we do down here in pass? Down here in pass, I'm going to comment this out. Down here in pass, we need to go over the products, right, which we have already in our product list. So we're going to treat this like a global variable. We're going to go in here and say, you know, for item in product list. And I'm just going to print item. And, you know, I'm going to pick hardware and then hit run interact, but it's going to show me everything. See, I don't want to see all these. I just want to see the hardware, right? So now this is what you need to figure out. You know, this is the last bit, and I'm going to leave it on you to figure this out. You need to figure out if the item category matches the selected category, print the information, right? So down here, inside this for loop, you have to say, you know, if the category equals, you know, how do you get the items category out? You might have to do that up here. You might have to follow some strategy to get this out. You know, maybe you use split. You know, you could use split to do that. Kind of like we did up here. You can also use starts with. So there's lots of different strategies you can use to do that. And I'll leave it up to you to decide how you want to do that. And then when the category matches that, then you want to print. And only then do you want to print. And then that's basically the entire program. Okay, so that's a huge hint for you. I want you to be successful here. I know you have a busy week, so I want to make sure that you can get through this and understand it. So, big hint for you. Okay, that's it. I hope you found the homework advice helpful. Goodbye now.